So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that you found the last presentation very informative. We are now going to have a discussion between a panel of experts. We have Dave Birch, independent expert. We obviously have Evelien from the European Central Bank, Michael Salmony, who is also an independent expert, and Fredrik Rydbeck, who is from the Riksbank. And I would remind you, again, please, that there will be a Slido available, so feel free to ask your questions. Evelien has outlined for us... Oh, sorry, I'm Nilixa Devlukia. I'm your moderator for today. Thank you. And so, where was I? Okay, so a quick, brief overview. Evelien's very admirably outlined what is the thinking behind a digital euro. We know for a fact that a central bank digital currency, a CBDC, is on the agenda for many central banks across the world. There is probably a paper published on this topic on a weekly, if not bi-weekly basis. And all of you in the room, I'm assuming, are here because hopefully before Evelien's presentation, you had heard of a digital euro. But bearing in mind that Evelien said that a digital euro acceptance will be cheaper for merchants, discount that before that presentation. How many of you came into this room thinking, we need a digital euro? So there's a lot of people to... Oh, well, hands up, I do as well. But there's a lot of people to convert in the room here today then, panel. So let me start with a question, which is to all my panellists. And I think it's maybe a question that you're asking yourselves, is that within the European Union, we actually have well-functioning payments ecosystem. We have card payments, we have account-to-account payments, we have e-money, we have instant payments on the horizon. So we are going to have, an even better payments ecosystem than we have today for digital payments. So, Evelien, I will start with you, and I appreciate what you've said in the presentation, but why do we need European public digital money?
Yeah. It's a very good question, and there's quite a lot I said already in the presentation. But I think the most pressing things are more policy consideration, as I tried to explain before. So if we would take the current state and we would take fast forward 20 years, and people would use less and less cash. Let's assume that this will continue to, that people would use it less for retail payments. Then at a certain point in time, we might end up in a world where there's no access to central bank money for people. People don't really think about this, but now there's cash, or you bring it to a bank or a credit institution, and then you can pay. But looking forward, if this would be the only option, that you first need to give your money to an institution and then only you can pay, that is great if that's a choice. But we believe it's important that you continue to have the choice to also have central bank money. And this trust we currently have, that you can go to the bank, put your money on, then go to the ATM, get cash, and vice versa, gives trust. You don't think about it, but it builds trust. So we think going forward it's good to retain that trust. And then I think I would go back to a couple of the points that I made. So on the strategic autonomy, the fact that payments is so crucial for our society, and we're so dependent on non-European commercial players, I think this is not good. It's good to have an alternative, and then people can still choose whatever they want. And the last but not least, you say we have a well-functioning payment system, but I'm not sure if everybody here agrees. If they agree whether there's sufficient competition at the moment. And I'm not sure if everybody agrees that you can now travel everywhere in the euro area and you can pay with whatever you want, which is currently not the case. I live now in the Netherlands and in Germany. But I quite often with the payment means for my Dutch banks, I'm being sent out of the restaurant because it's not accepted in Germany. So I think for all these reasons, it's good that there is a digital euro. And as we said before, it would not replace anything. It will be an additional choice that people could use.
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like about this digital euro. I mean, for merchants, I think that sounds really great. You can accept it everywhere. It's a pan-European scheme. It's going to cost less than what we have now. It's irreversible. It's instant. Lots of lovely things. I do have some concerns whether we really do need a state-driven alternative to the private solutions that are emerging, because there are various open banking-based solutions like SPA, there's EPI, there are lots of other private initiatives, and for them to compete against a solution which is funded by the taxpayer a little bit doesn't seem an entirely level playing field. But maybe the industry has not managed to get a pan-European solution going, and therefore maybe that is what is necessary. What I also like about the CBDC is it's going to have APIs on it. So that means the fintechs can then do their magic on top of it and initiate payments and use the data. So there's lots to like about CBDC, but I'm a bit concerned about the intervention in the free market without necessarily being a market failure in evidence.
Thank you. Fredrik?
Yeah, so from a Swedish point of view here, we've been looking into the CBDC, retail CBDC topic for quite some time. We started looking into this early 2017, I think we started. And the driver for that was the declining cash usage in Sweden. And, well, I agree with Evelien, there's the need for public money is there, I believe. But maybe in Sweden we don't have as a similar use case for P2P, for example, the uniformity need. So we have a very mature, highly efficient payment market. But there's more to that. So you have to look what's underneath. And the Riksbank, the central bank, has the responsibility to ensure that the payment systems are efficient, that they are secure, and that they can last for a very long time. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking into it from our point of view. Now there's no decision to issue a CBDC in Sweden yet, but it's still an important piece a potential piece or a tool in the toolbox for us, and that's why we think that we need to continue investigating it.
And hopefully they'll be interoperable and exchangeable when you both end up implementing your CBDCs.
Hopefully.
Dave, do you think we need digital public money in Europe?
Well, I won't check. When I visit Europe in the future, will I be allowed to use digital euros? Or is it only for European citizens?
Well, it would be there. For the start, it would be for European citizens, but the idea would be that it would be opened up after that.
Okay. So I have an interest in it then. So
yes.
So I say, I'm not sure I should comment on it. I mean, I think broadly speaking, there are sort of three areas where it's required. I think there's the sort of political aspects of it to do with domestic sovereignty and international, what we might call soft power, which I think isn't really the subject of the panel today, but is real. I think there are political dynamics there. I think there are the sort of economic and social issues around inclusion, sustainability and things like that, which I think we probably should discuss a little more, because I'm not convinced that the digital euro in its current form addresses those head on. And then, of course, I come from the technology side. So on the technological side, you've got the issues around innovation and in particular resilience, which I'm very strongly in favour of. But the competition point, I think, is the key point. So you said we're very well served by all of these, but actually they're all really the same thing. So it doesn't matter. You're basically moving money from one bank account to another bank account. So we have lots of options for moving money through the existing system. But the crucial point about digital cash, as opposed to digital money, is that digital cash doesn't go through the banking system. When I pay you the 10 euros I owe you, the 10 euros should, in a well-designed system, go from my phone to your phone, or from my hat to your car, or whatever, not going anywhere near the banking system. The fundamental competition is with the banking system as it stands, and I think that's a crucial element of the competition, which gives us the resilience and the other things that we need. So I am strongly in favour of it, but I would be doing a dishonour if I said I thought that the current proto design is really the optimum for Europe, because I'm not sure about that.
So we'll be coming to that. I noticed that people have been not slow to ask questions, so rest assured, all of you in the audience, we will leave sufficient time to address your questions, because I see that it's a popular topic.
Yeah. Just as soon as the legal people have finished, we'll get to answer them.
But just building on what we've said, so generally we have a view that we do need public money. We need central bank issued public money in the hands of end users, be that consumers, merchants, but there are challenges possibly with implementation, and there are concerns about competition. So if we sort of move on from that, and I will come to you first, Fredrik, if you're thinking about, and the Riksbank have been thinking about this actually for quite a long time, it was one of the first banks to think about issuing a digital currency. Given the sort of work that you've done and the lessons that you learned along the way, what are the stepping stones that you think a central bank needs to take to be confident that once it issues a CBDC, it's actually going to be adopted? And in that ecosystem, what are the benefits going to be for merchants, given the audience that we have in the room?
Well, one thing that we should not do is introduce more risk in the system, first of all. So that's top of mind for a central bank. And there's a way to mitigate that risk, of course. But we think a lot about, you can launch a product in different ways. And central banks in general has not maybe launched consumer products in the same extent or to the same in the same magnitude as, for example, the Digital Euro project. But what we've seen so far with the CBDCs that have been launched is that there's been considerable considerations into the different risks, and there's a plan and you follow it. But some of these launches that we've seen early on have been somewhat rushed, I would say, and some of them you can sort of tell that they've tried to figure out or develop a product that maybe is slightly off in terms of product market fit. So there needs to be a proper design thinking process when launching any type of product, and it's easy for a central bank, I think, to sit down and create a theoretical product that ticks all the boxes, and then when you launch it, you either haven't understood your end users, or you have failed to provide certain functionalities. And for example, I don't know if you look at eNaira, for example, in Nigeria, some folks say that launch was slightly rushed because they had to adapt and update the systems after launch, and I think it was a Sand Dollar, for example, in Bahamas, who they have slightly misunderstood the end user's need in terms of they tried to address financial inclusion, but turns out that the customers or the end users actually that wasn't a problem. It was a problem, but not to the same extent as they had thought. So understanding the users and then making sure that what you launch is a good product market fit. But the problem that we're facing as a central bank is that, folks here, you're probably very used to rolling out products, and what you do is you don't tick all the boxes, and then you launch a big bang launch. You launch with something that you think will work, that is an MVP, and then you try it out. You fail, and you fail fast, and then you change it and you iterate. We don't maybe have the same luxury as a central bank here, so that's an interesting but also scary sort of obstacle or challenge that we're facing.
And that's a really interesting point you make, actually. You don't have that opportunity to actually launch and fail and learn. There's a lot at stake if you get it wrong. So you have to be sure on day one as you start to roll out. And you talked about understanding, actually knowing the problems you want to solve for. And Dave, you mentioned just now that you're not convinced that the way that central banks have gone about thinking about implementing a digital currency feels the correct way to you. So
no, I think it's more nuanced than that. So you're absolutely right. But you have a very strong program of engagement to try and understand this. But my reservations about it are that the people that we're engaging with, and I speak from the point of view of having advised other central banks in this issue, is that the people that need to be engaged with, civil society broadly, actually are nowhere near understanding enough about digital currency or a digital euro in order to... So if you go to law enforcement or the groups that represent old people like me, or, I don't know, sports company, I know, you go to these different groups and say, okay, what do you think about a digital euro? What requirements? They don't really know. I mean, their input isn't really that helpful at this point. So I actually think we're some way away from understanding what the full catalogue of requirements and goals and constraints for a digital currency really is. And so it seems to me a little in advance to be thinking about these crucial design elements, especially when I'm going to be annoying to everybody here and say, essentially all of the pilots and trials that have been done to date are largely worthless because we don't really know what we want the digital currency to do yet. I mean, I can confidently predict that, Evelien, your team is never going to implement a digital euro using the same technology as the sand dollar or the e-naira. Well, I know all of those things were sort of pointless and it doesn't matter. But I still think in order to get the engagement we need with civil society, we are some way away from that. The level of understanding is so... You come to meetings like this and these people are seasoned, intelligent professionals. But if you go and talk about digital currency in some of the places I go talk about it, people are, I suppose you're going to inject microchips into us. Of course I tell them that we will because what do you think the 5G towers are for? That's what I told them, So the level of public debate on this, I think, is nowhere near... The quality of input that you need to make these decisions, I honestly think is some way away. I think you're very optimistic with your programme. That's a genuine opinion.
Well, okay, so thank you. So Evelien, I know you engaged, I know you want the input, but do you actually think that for a central bank, it is more a case of we need public money, we need digital public money to be future-proof, and actually we're building the infrastructure to allow whatever comes off the back of that to happen, as opposed to needing all the answers right now?
Well, I think in general, to the point that was made earlier, is that to roll out in one go, so legally it cannot be that we only launch a digital euro in the Netherlands and say Spain only 2 years later. That will be difficult. So once there will be a real digital euro, it needs to be everywhere. But we have proposed to do a phased approach so that we will not launch all use cases. This is still also in the legislative debate sometimes discussed, because not only because it's technically extremely complex to have everything ready at the same time, but I think it's also, and that's maybe to the point of David, very difficult to explain to people, say, okay, now we have a digital euro, you can use it in peer-to-peer, and then you use it like this. And then we have also offline, then it works like this. And if you go to the shop, it works like this. And I think you get my draft. So I think our idea would be that we do a phased approach, not only that the market would be ready, but also that we would step by step have people getting used to how it would work. And then you could add some new features. to the point that was mentioned also, do we know sufficiently? Well, from my experience, the best thing is to give people things hands-on and to let them try with mock-ups. So this is work, we did a bit of that work in the investigation phase. We did some focus groups where we didn't necessarily ask, what do you think of the digital euro? But we said, more on retail payments. What would you appreciate? What features do you like? So to make it close to home. We have used that input, and now in the next phase, we really want to do user experience also, indeed, with people, showing people and letting them interact with that and getting the information. And then I think we need to realize that if at some point a digital euro would be implemented, it would not be static for the rest of its existence. So we will need. It needs to evolve. Needs of people will evolve. Technology will evolve. So at some point, this will come. And then what I'm very much looking into with the team, and that's part of this phase, is how would we go from start building to real implementation and doing piloting in between. Is something we really would look forward, but we need to see how and how to do this. Yeah.
Thank you. Michael, I just wanted to pick up on a point you made before about competition. And obviously, there's competition at different layers of a digital euro ecosystem. But the foundation is the infrastructure. So give us your thoughts. How do you think that that's going to play out in the long run, the infrastructure requirements, build, interaction?
I'm going to slightly modify your question, as every politician does.
Not question time.
I think the thing that excites me the most about the CBDC is your description of the offline. You know, I tap my phone on your phone, and that's how we transfer €5. That works across Europe, independent of where we're banking. I think that is a really exciting scenario, which immediately everybody understands, which the competition in the market so far hasn't solved. This is an opportunity for introducing tokenized money, so actually a modern form of money. I think that is a really intriguing variant of the CBDC. Again, to just add a little bit of oil into the ointment, it is a question of whether that leaves the sovereignty. If I tap my Apple phone onto your Android phone, are we totally independent of the gaffers when we do that? Will we actually go to a tokenized version? Because at the moment it doesn't look like that. And also the battlefields of European payments are littered with the corpses of failed digital wallets. You know, Geldkarte and various other digital wallets, they've all failed. So I hope this one will make it, because this is something we could really use.
This one's going to have the backing
I just
of the
have to
central
correct
bank.
Michael on one. I mean, I agree with you. Actually, we should start with we shouldn't move to the offline case. We should start with the offline case. If it never works in shops, I couldn't care less. I mean, the digital euro that works offline is the new product. But you're wrong about one thing, and that's we don't call them gaffers anymore. Get with the program, Michael. It's MAGAs. It's Meta, Apple, Google, Amazon. It's the MAGAs now. So he's a little old, you know. So.
I stand corrected.
Thank you for that. So offline, yes, I think I saw questions about offline as well, so we'll come to those. Before I go on to those questions on Slido, let me just ask all of you about the fact that as and when we have a digital euro, it's going to be subject to the same challenges that we see today with regard to fraud in payments ecosystems. It's not necessarily going to be new, it's not necessarily going to be different, it's going to be launched in an ecosystem in which we see an increase in fraudulent transactions, we see regulatory oversight in trying to mitigate those provisions. So if we're looking at, and obviously that carries reputational risk for, I would say, a central bank within that ecosystem, however you decide to issue it, single tier, two tier. We know the ECB is going for two tier. And that may well be exacerbated by offline payments. So do you foresee, and this is a slight nuance what we're talking about, that we actually need a digital identity in place before the ECB launches a digital euro? And Dave, let me come to you
Well, that's
first.
what the microchips are for. I mean, it's impossible to have a digital euro without having a digital identity. But in Europe, the EU digital identity wallet is a very interesting experiment in what can be done, which will certainly drive development in that area. So I think, from that point of view, it stages correctly. What I would say about it as a general point, though, is, broadly speaking, fraud isn't a payments problem. So what we need is a digital identity infrastructure that solves the fraud problem. And it doesn't matter whether it's account to account or digital euro or anything else. You know what I mean? Like, fraud isn't a payments problem. It's an identity problem. So
I agree with that. Actually, I agree with you.
thank you.
And
And that's the clip we'll use. Right?
I agree that sometimes payments questions can get tangled up in fraud questions. Instant, for example, sometimes get tangled up in fraud. We can't have instant because of this and that. But I don't agree with that notion. We should separate them. But also, not only on the fraud, from a fraud perspective, but also on the usability perspective, the digital identity and the user journey when it comes to identifying yourself. That will be crucial, regardless if you're online or offline, but specifically for the whole product. So we've seen that in Sweden, for example. We have a big Swish scheme, basically, which is P2P payments. Everybody's using it, 10 million users. And I would say that the success of Swish P2P payments is partly, or the main reason, is the smooth bank identification service, authentication service that exists in Sweden today. So I think if you think about payments in general and the success of any sort of payment, you need to rely on a smooth and secure authentication journey. And I think also if I think about TPPs and open banking, for example, even though we have a super smooth authentication journey through this private bank ID, private company that provides this service, still we see that the payment journey is so delicate, and it needs to go super fast, and it needs to be secure. So even though you have these very smooth journeys and that service has been in place for a very long time, there's still improvements that can be made. And so I think it will be key for any type of product that you launch, CBDC or not.
Can I just add one on
Yes,
top
please.
of that? Because I think you two have been very mild on this topic. I'd like to have a little bit of a rant. Because I think this whole topic of identity is something we should have started years ago, before we started building all these digital cathedrals that we're doing now. We build e-commerce and e-invoicing and e-this and mobile that based on passwords or sending images of our passports around. It is an absolute nightmare. This is what we should have started as an industry for everything. Everything we do in digital, which means absolutely everything. That should have been the starting point. And that's the reason why we have so much fraud and identity theft, and why authentication journeys are so terrible, and all that. So I don't think it's impossible to overemphasize the need for proper identity. And I think actually the EU, with its horribly named EIDAS 2.0, actually has a really good approach there. It is an attribute-based system, so I only check if I'm over 18. I don't hand over my whole passport. It goes beyond government identity, so not just passport thinking, but also whether I've been COVID vaccinated, what my academic credentials are. This all goes into this identity wallet. I think it's a very smart approach, which we don't have time to explore here. And I really hope this gets really far and fast, and then we can also use it for CBDC.
Yeah.
Evelien, did you want to add? Michael, I think you're all absolutely spot on in the need for digital identity, not just for digital euro, but for everything we now do in the model digital world. Evelien, did you want to add anything to that?
Maybe so. the digital euro is not going to solve everything, so we're not going to solve the digital identity thing. So I apart from that, I do agree with what was said. But just to be clear, so on the offline one, this is actually one that we designed to be very private. And actually, you don't need to, it is like a banknote. So we can hold our two secure devices next to each other. And we don't need to identify each other because the money will just go from one to the other. So actually for offline, we don't need an identity and there will be no identity. And you only need, of course, to unlock your own wallet in order before you can pay so that it's not stolen before. Also has, of course, then the implication that if you lose your offline device, you lose your money. For online, there needs to be a digital identity. You need to authorize yourself. For now, we have or designed digital euro that we could interact with multiple ways to identify yourself, and one, of course, is the e-identity that is currently developed by the Commission. But we have not made them conditional to each other.
If I'm a citizen of the Netherlands, for example, I can only have one digital euro wallet, right? I can't have multiple wallets. So you must have a digital identity.
But that's an interesting question because indeed we had proposed only one and the legislative proposal says multiple. So this is still something that's open for debate, whether you can help. But in either way, we need somewhere to identify who you are.
But the maximum balance I can hold is 3,000 euros or something. So.
Yeah, that still need to be determined, but you get a holding limit. But so we need indeed at some point in time, not we, but it needs to be established that there is a person and that you identify yourself. And actually, since we don't have one identifier which is similar across Europe, we need to think about how this identifier will be built so that we can indeed make sure that even if you go from the Netherlands to Germany and in Austria, that you can only have this holding limit on one or multiple accounts.
And if we do an offline transaction, you said there's no identity.
No.
But then how would you limit it to 3,000 euros? If you don't know who I am, how would you? Yeah,
the idea is the offline you need to fund. So you go to your bank, you identify who you are, and then you say, part of my holding limit I want to put on my offline device. And then it's on your offline device, and then you do whatever transactions you have.
Good.
Thank you. I'm sorry to cut you short there, but I really should come to some of the audience questions. And I mean, let's take the sort of controversial one there. That's like, and I'll start with you, Evelien. Why should anybody use CBDC instead of Bitcoin? I mean, you've got the spectrum. They're all digital assets, so.
Well, that's easy because Bitcoin is.
Sorry, is your name Evelien, David?
Well, you can go. Go second.
It's not worth wasting her time on it. Bitcoin's not money, so the question doesn't mean anything.
I would say the same. I think the position of the ECB is quite clear about not Bitcoin specifically, but these kind of solutions. Currently, they are really how do you say? Well, maybe investment. You could call it gambling, but at least because they have no value, no state value, so it's difficult to use it as money. So there we agree. But if people want to use it, it's not then it's up to these people to use it. I mean,
sure. Thank you.
I don't mean it's not useful as money because it goes up and down. I mean,
Mr. Birch.
It's not money. Money has to be fungible.
I agree.
Bitcoin isn't fungible.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even
Mr.
if it was stable,
please let me ask the audience questions because we're running out of time.
Oh, sorry.
There are questions here specifically, Evelien, for you on the proposed amendments to the European Parliament on removing card fee caps. Is that one on which the ECB currently has a view? Because obviously it's all work in progress.
Yeah, we have a view on the proposal that was there for the Commission, and what we have also explained in our opinion is that we do understand that this has been put in the draft legislation, because on one side there is the mandatory acceptance, so that you want to cap at some point that this is not misused, we would understand. But as I said, these things are really in the end for the legislator. But for us, we really understood that this would be important to have in the legislation.
Thank you. Did anybody else want to comment on the changes from the European Parliament before we move on? So let me just pick up on the last question, and maybe, Fredrik, I'll start with you. It's talking about, and you've touched upon this already, it's talking about China, it's talking about sand dollar, it's talking about the Bahamas, and it's talking about, obviously, the lack of adoption. So how do you see that a digital euro is going to overcome these problems regarding adoption? I mean, that's going to be key, isn't it? It can be minted and it can be made available, and obviously there's got to be a rollout. But without merchants actually putting in place the ecosystem to allow people to pay with it, it's going to have a very slow burn.
I shouldn't probably answer on behalf of Evelien here, but the way we reason around this at the Riksbank is that we have to, again, cliche warning, but we have to understand the end users, what type of problem that it is that we're solving. But we will provide the good, which is digital money, but we don't have the role of sort of providing the end users with the actual products, if you will. So we view this as a sort of like a platform for innovation to be able to build services and products on top of this platform. So that's a key thing for us, I think, not to engage too much. But we still have to understand the ins and outs of the market, the obstacles that merchants are facing, that end users are facing in various scenarios. So that would be the key sort of thing here, understanding what type of problems you're trying to solve. And I can't really answer for exactly how that work is being conducted at ECB in terms of sort of end user studies and things like that. But I'll hand over to Evelien maybe.
Well, I'll hand over to Evelien, but Dave, you obviously would like to come in on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we should be focusing on merchants as the primary use case. You're talking about a new form of money. You're talking about a new platform for innovation. It's like there's no burning platform, as our American cousins would say. My debit card works absolutely fine in Carrefour. Like there's no, So what's the point of having a digital euro which tries to do what cards already do perfectly well now? That doesn't seem, to Michael's point about having offline device to device and then let people build things on top of it. To me, that seems a more realistic path to something new and different and interesting that people want to use. If you have something like you have in China, for example, you basically just have, an annoying debit card that you have to top up. I mean, it doesn't really represent a radical new way of doing things. I think we should be setting the bar higher in Europe. We should be creating something really new and different,
I think a couple of things. So first, very much agree. So we really need to see where you can add value, and that could be about new use cases. But as we said, we also want to make sure on our monetary sovereignty, it's one of the other questions that's there, so that it really is used in retail payment solutions that we are currently there. So we can do end-to-end, I think, and then we need to see at what pace. I just also want to be a bit cautious. I think most of you know that if you introduce a new payment method, it takes years before it takes up. So Ideal is now like the successful story in the Netherlands, but it was like this for a very long time, and then it gets a pickup. So a lot of people look at this after 1 or 2 years and say, well, it's not a huge success, but payment methods needs time. People need to adjust to new things. And one important thing that I would want to say, so for the digital euro, we don't look for dominance or whatever. What we find important, that choice is there and that it's used on a regular basis by sufficient people. So not that there is any resilience crisis that everybody needs to download apps and think, oh my God, how is this going to work? Because we're already in a crisis. I mean, that would not really work. But we would not like the aim is not to have a super high percentage of usage there. Just to give a bit of additional information.
Okay. Michael, did you want to come in?
I actually think that the merchants are going to be a key to this. Because for the merchants, the CBDC has some advantages. I tried to say at the beginning, right? It's usable everywhere and refund and immediate and blah, blah, blah. So if they... No,
they can't use
you've said enough. And in order to get this accepted, I think the merchants have to drive the ecosystem, because the banks are not going to be super motivated, right? Because they have to do all the work, all the wallets, and do the KYC and handle the fraud and answer the hotlines. And they're going to have their liquidity reduced, because if the money moves to central bank money, then they will have less money for lending. So it hits them where it hurts. So I think the banks need to be convinced by somebody, for example, the merchants, that this would be a good thing, and also the end users. You know, how do I explain to the man in the street that he's going to have a Barclays pound and a Bank of England pound in his mobile banking app? That's a hard sell. But if you get the merchants to say, why don't you use this new money? I'll give you a rebate, it's going to cost less, I'll give you more loyalty points. So I think the merchants will actually be able to drive this thing. Sorry, Dave.
No, I was just to say the merchants can't use it for refunds because the merchant wallets have to maintain a zero balance, right? The money that's deposited in the merchant wallets
but we have built something very
account.
clever, which is called the waterfall, and then they can just do refunds as well in the digital euro.
So what balance are they allowed to hold?
Zero, but we have built what we call waterfall, reverse waterfall. So you can say I do a digital euro and then you top up in the transaction.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time, and I have been told that I have to have a very prompt finish today. So adhering to the guidelines I've been given, thank you very much for taking the time to come to this session today. I hope you've appreciated the very full and frank views that our panelists have shared with you. And let's just see, show of hands. We had them at the beginning, at the end. Who now thinks that we should have a digital euro?
Well, that's gone down.
No, there's more. It's gone up. It has gone up. So, panelists, well done.
Thank you, well done.